Mary Pat say a few words of hello before we get started. Again, hello everyone. I'm Elizabeth Paul. I'm manager of the Birmingham Business Alliance. Thanks for joining our Governmental Affairs Committee meeting today. And now I'll kick it over to Mary Pat, who chairs our committee. So thank you, Mary Pat, for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. As Elizabeth said, I'm Mary Pat Lawrence. I'm with Protective Life in the Government Affairs Department. Great to see you all here today. This is our April meeting of the BBA Government Affairs Committee. I cannot believe it is April. Time is really flying. But we're excited to have Senator Reed. But before he joins, as Elizabeth said, Daryl, I think you wanted to give us a few comments. And Senator Wagner, you too, we'd love to hear from you as well if you've got anything you want to share with us. So I'll stop there, Daryl, and turn it over to you if that works.
It does, and I'll be very brief. I'm going to yield most of my time to the Rules Chair. The General Fund Bill, HB 309, has passed the House. It is in the Senate. It's in committee. I don't think it's scheduled for a committee meeting this week, so I assume next week. But the General Fund Bill looks good, actually, as far as overall dollar amount. The Ed budget started in the Senate. It's passed the Senate. It is now in the House, and I think it is on committee for Wednesday. Historic tax credit, something we're all involved in one way or another. It's passed the House. It's passed our Senate committee. I think has second read and potentially poised to pass this week. When we go in tomorrow, we'll be in day 24. So 7 days left as of today in the session. Senator Wagner has 2 or 3 wine deals. One is passed. Hopefully at least one more is coming up. So with that, Senator, I yield the rest of my time to the chairman, Senator Wagner.
Daryl is correct. A normal regular session is 30 legislative days, and we're on the 24th. We have tomorrow. We have 7 legislative days. Going to meet 2 days this week and 2 days the following 2 weeks, and then come back on May the 7th for the final day. Daryl is correct. The education budget passed the Senate and it's over the House. The general fund passed the House and it's in the Senate. So that's the status of both budgets. The education budget grew substantially, about 700 million more. It's about $7.7 billion this year, or next year. Our budget season begins October 1, but this year's budget was 7.2 billion. So next year's budget will be 7.7. So we had a substantial increase in the education budget, which is positive news, especially since we've been involved with the pandemic for about a year. Our revenue stream has held up in spite of the downturn and some revenue sources. So we're looking good as far as our budgets are concerned. We had a real controversial issue to come up last week in the Senate. And let me back up 1 minute. Every state surrounding us has some level of gambling, at least a lottery, and some have more. It's a fact that we have lots of illegal gambling going on in Alabama. It's right here in Jefferson County. The state receives 0 revenue from the illegal gambling sources. So we passed a bill through the Senate last week that legalizes lottery and some casinos. We have 3 Indian casinos in the state. The new legislation would allow another one up in northeast Alabama. The governor would sign a compact with the Indians that we would start receiving revenue from the Indian casinos, a substantial amount. And at this point in our history, we receive nothing. Even their own Indian reservations, they're paying no taxes to the state of Alabama. The new one up in Northeast Alabama would be on, I assume, private property. There's not a reservation in Northeast Alabama, so it'll be on private property right in the corner where it would benefit from Tennessee and Georgia, corner of the northeast part of Alabama. But it was controversial, very controversial, a lot of debate. The Republicans did a poll earlier this year or end of last year. The question, it polled over 700 Republican voters. And 78% of those polls said they wanted the right to vote on a gambling issue, 78%. So what we did, yes, it passed the Senate. It's a question whether or not the gambling bill will pass the House. But if it does, it will go to a vote of the people in November of this year. Yes on gambling or no on gambling. So, but that's a very controversial issue. But at the end of the day, it's the people of Alabama that will decide whether or not a majority of Alabamians want lottery, want casinos in Alabama. I hate just to talk about a very controversial issue, but it's on my mind substantially since last week because there was a lot of debate and it was a tough vote. But sooner or later, you have to stand up and deal with those complicated, controversial issues. So that's where we are. We've had a couple of other controversies, legalizing medical marijuana. Of course, the word marijuana scares a lot of members of the Senate, the House, but when you're dealing with medical marijuana, we've literally had hundreds of people in Alabama that have had to go out of state because it has benefited their child or the adult in the family. And there's a whole lot of restrictions in that legislation about who can use it, where they will access the medical marijuana. So it was a very hotly debated issue, but I think there's a lot of protections in it. I talked to a lot of physicians that advised me, and they read it, okay? There's so many protections as far as being access to the marijuana for casual use. But yes, it passed the Senate, but it's over in the House. So that was another controversial bill. One that I handled will allow you to have home delivery to wine like you do groceries. That had some controversy to it also, but you can call your local grocer or your ABC store and they can deliver your wine to your home like they do groceries from your grocery store. So that's a quick update. I was surprised I had to fill in while my good friend Greg Reed is on the way, but he's a busy guy, but I was glad to make a few comments. And if you have any questions on any of those subjects, I'll be glad to entertain them.
Well, that was an excellent update. Thank you so much. That was very, very helpful. So I appreciate that. Sorry to put you on the spot like that, but you did a
That's okay. I'm kind of used to it, so that's okay.
Pat, might have another minute if we still have a couple minutes left.
Yes, we do, Daryl.
I'll make one point is at 12 o'clock on Monday, we just finished discussing marijuana, wine, and gaming. I feel a good time somewhere. Number two, on a serious point, there is another bill that has created some concern in certain quarters. That's the PBM bill. I think it's coming up for a vote sometime soon. If it's okay, Madam Chairperson, I'll take a point here and ask Ted Haas to join us for a minute or two at 12:11, assuming we have a couple minutes for our Senator Reed gets on board. So Ted, if you're there, can you give us a very quick update on your PBM bill, please?
Yeah, thanks, Daryl. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Okay, so the PBM bill was passed out of the Senate. It was vastly different from the one that was originally introduced. Most of y'all saw that the scoring on the cost to businesses on the first bill was somewhere in the $800 to $1,000 per employee range. Obviously, that's untenable. All of the provisions that for which there was an identifiable cost have been taken out of the bill or modified in a way that they would no longer attach a particular cost. It's not to say that we can guarantee that there is absolutely no cost when you introduce regulation into a previously unregulated environment. There's likely to be some cost, but at this stage, what we're looking at is we think it would be incidental and very minimal at most. So the bill's passed the Senate, it's in House Health Committee, and it's on the agenda for Wednesday for a vote. There are a couple of, we consider them technical amendments that we're trying to work out with the sponsor, Senator Butler. And we don't love this bill. It's a compromise. And obviously in a compromise situation, you wind up both sides feeling like they didn't get everything that they wanted. And certainly that's the case here. So a lot of folks played a role in getting us to this point, not the least of which is the Rules Committee Chair on the phone, on the Zoom call here. He was instrumental in making sure that we could get this to a spot where we believe that we can live with it. So I want to thank Senator Wagner for that, especially. That was a big help, and we wouldn't have been where we are now without him. So
thanks,
happy to
Ted.
answer any questions. Absolutely.
If I could add a side note concerning Blue Cross, the president and CEO of Blue Cross, Mr. Tim Vines, was confirmed to the Auburn Board of Trustees last week by the confirmation committee. And it's certainly an honor for this community to have Tim on the Auburn Board of Trustees. And it's a huge plus for Auburn University. Tim is a very, very respected person in our community. He happens to live in my area in Vestavia, but he was confirmed last week, and he will be a tremendous asset to Auburn University. And I'm so proud that he was confirmed because he's been a longtime friend of mine. And of course, he works with Ted Hosp, and I wanted everybody to know we have a new trustee at Auburn.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that. Mary Pat, are we ready for the approach him yet or not?
So I will have to ask Elizabeth if he has joined yet. I have not received a notice.
I haven't seen that he has jumped on yet. I'm sure it'll be any minute now, but we could kind of open things up to committee members if anybody has any issues that they're working on in relation to the state legislative session or any community issues they want to throw out there. We'd be happy to discuss and hear from folks.
Elizabeth,
And by the way,
Hey, Charles.
sorry.
hey, I just had one comment. I was going to mention to Senator Wagner that I had hoped that if the casinos were allowed in Birmingham, that it would be built in the downtown area, like the one in New Orleans and the one that'll probably that one day be built in downtown Atlanta. so that it would be within walking distance of all of these restaurants and hotels that have been hit so hard by, by the pandemic. It would just really just be probably a godsend for them. And I know it's probably too late to raise that point, but just wanted to throw that out there.
I imagine if there is a facility in the Birmingham area, it probably will be out at the old, well, I know it is the old horse track, okay, out in the eastern part of the county. So, but maybe the new bill would allow another structure in the downtown area. But that's really above my pay grade to know where it will be. But I think it's more or less set for what I call the old horse track, dog track. Let me make one general comment if I can have another minute. In the process in Montgomery, including the House and the Senate, there's probably in round numbers right at 1,000 pieces of legislation that has been introduced. Probably 600 bills in the House and 400 in the Senate. But the good news is probably between 200 and 250 will ever become law, and that's a good thing. I think I made the comment before when I was the program for the Birmingham Business Alliance that if we passed every bill that was introduced into the process, you wouldn't want to live in Alabama, nor could you afford to live in Alabama. So some of us pride ourselves in defeating bad legislation. Several of us read and study and talk to a lot of people about legislation, and there's really some bad stuff introduced into the process, but as a senator or a House member, you can introduce into the process any proposed legislation that comes into your mind, but that doesn't mean it's going to pass. So that's what some of us probably spend more time weeding through the bad bills and passing what we might call a good bill.
Senator Wagner, we had a question come in, if you don't mind another minute or two as we wait for Senator Reed. But would you mind expanding on the likelihood for Medicaid expansion to pass, maybe, this session or next session?
It probably, I'm on the kind of the outside looking in, but it probably has more support than in times past. A lot of states have gone to Medicaid expansion, and there's some good reasons too, but it would be a huge expense on the taxpayers of Alabama. I don't know the amount. I have not looked at that in quite some time, but I would say it's probably got more support and more activity today than it has in times past. That does not mean it's going to come to pass in Alabama. The governor will have a lot to say about that, and I have not talked to her about Medicaid expansion, but there's more of a movement today than there has been in times past. That's not a very good answer, but that's where we are in the state right now.
Hey, Senator Wagner, it's Charles again. I think it may be on the Medicaid expansion. One thing it might be helpful for us to look at it as another aspect of economic development. We don't have the benefit of having hundreds of thousands of new residents moving into the state like Florida, South Carolina, and Tennessee, and so it's really even more important for us to keep the workers we do have healthy. If they just happen not to be poor enough or work in a place that does not provide health coverage. Just something, just food for thought.
Right. Thanks, Charles.
Senator, if I may, this strikes me as a session, even though we've had a lot of adversity outside of our control. It seems to be this has been a remarkably efficient session so far. Not a whole bunch of hiccups, some controversy always, but nothing that you guys couldn't deal with. It looks like a good session. Is that your thought or something different?
Daryl, it is. And there's been some big changes in Montgomery because of the virus. The State House is virtually, I won't say shut down, but it's a lot more restricted on who can access the State House because of the virus. When we come to work on Tuesday morning, we get tested. And of course, visitors, if they have an appointment with a House member or senator, they get tested. They can come to the 5th floor or the 7th floor and meet with their senator or their House member or another staff member, but they cannot, what I would call, hang around and walk up and down the hall. It's very restricted because of the virus. And I miss, the people that can kind of visit and come talk and talk about legislation. But most of the time it's by telephone or text or email. And that's a big change from times past. But I'm ready for us to go back to the old way of doing business in Montgomery. But we've had to do it. That was one of the protocols that the leadership in the House and Senate came up with, that we had to come with some protocols that restricted access to the House and Senate because of the virus. And, and it worked because we've had maybe 1 or 2 cases since March, but it's really worked, and that was a good thing.
Thank you, Senator. Elizabeth, back to you.
Thanks. I'll turn it over to Mary Pat since our guest speaker has now joined us.
Okay, great. Well, welcome, Senator Reed. This is Mary Pat Lawrence with Protective Life. You may have heard that we have another special guest on here today, Senator Wagner. So we're thrilled that he's been giving us a little preview of what's been going on in Montgomery and what's to come. But we're so happy that you're with us today. I'm just going to give a few comments with your background and then turn it over to you for your remarks. So Senator Reed, as you all know, President Pro Tem of the Alabama State Senate, is our guest here today. Senator Reed was born in Jasper and grew up in South Walker County, graduated from Walker County Public Schools and Walker College before earning his bachelor's at the University of Alabama. Senator Reed is the Vice President of Preferred Medical Systems, a distributor of diagnostic imaging products in multiple markets across the country. And from that career, it's enabled him to learn the ins and outs of business development, economic growth, and marketing, which is a great asset in a public official. So Senator Reed and his wife have 3 sons, including 1 set of twins. And Senator Reed, I know you and I have talked about this. I'm a twin parent too. I have twin boys as well. So we're in the twin club. But he was elected to the Senate in 2010, served as majority leader starting in 2015. And then in February of this year was unanimously elected as President Pro Tem of the Senate. So a great accomplishment. Congratulations. I know you're a very, very busy person. So we are so grateful for you to be with us today. With that, Senator Reed, I don't see you on the screen, but I hope you're out there, and I'll turn it over to you.
Mary Pat, thank you so much. I am out here. I can actually see you. And I've tried to do my best in working the electronics here. It says that my video is on. So I don't know why you can't see me, but I apologize for that. Let me say, okay, now I see myself. So maybe you can see me.
I can.
All right. Well, the idea that I'm following comments by the rules chairman, Senator Wagner, makes me a little bit nervous because he knows more about everything than I do. So if I repeat something that he's already informed you of, then it will be that I'm, like always, following him and following his instruction. Senator Wagner is my great friend and colleague. And I appreciate the opportunity to share the stage with him today. And again, I apologize for being a little bit late to the meeting today. Let me just say on the outset that we've worked on a lot of different issues and topics in the Alabama Senate. I think I heard Darrell mention to Senator Wagner just a moment ago that we've had a really good session. Seems that things have gone smoothly, and I would certainly agree with that. That was one of the goals that I had when I came to the body as president. At the beginning of the session, I wanted to be able to work together, Republican, Democrat, all of our caucuses work together, and we've been able to do that and accomplish, I feel, some really important things. You all are familiar with what we did in the first 2 weeks of the session with some historic legislation related to incentive packages, of which I carried in the Senate, as well as liability issues that were very important to business, and also don't pay tax on your stimulus resource, which was important to business folks across our state as well. We've continued to move on from that to focus on military and veterans bills. We focused on issues associated with state agencies, which has been very important because many of those agencies have waited for 2 years for some of their issues to be addressed because we had such an abbreviated session last year. So that was very important. Also, we've worked hard on budgets. The good news is budgets for Alabama are in better shape than we expected or anticipated. We're not by any means flush with cash, but we are in a better place than we thought we could be as a result of dealing with the coronavirus, and certainly in a much better place than what has been the case for other states across the country that are in the midst of seeing cuts and reductions and changes in their budgets as a result of being hit hard by the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic. In looking at those budgets, we were able to get budgets out of the House of Origin before the legislature had a spring break, which in my tenure of 10 years in office, that's the first time that's ever happened. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of all of those that serve on those budget committees to be able to get the budgets moving. We've got good information there. And so that's been a real positive. Now we've moved on to deal with some very significant pieces of legislation to a lot of the membership, whether it's gaming legislation or medical marijuana or topics associated with distribution of different products and looking at some recovery topics associated with coronavirus and some economic benefits that we've seen with that as well. Those have been some things that we've continued to look at and work forward with. So I would agree we've had a good session. I'm confident that we will finish strong. We have 7 legislative days left. So we're going to be working the next 3 weeks are going to be 2-day legislative weeks. So we'll be in session on Tuesdays and Thursdays, have a lot of committee work going on Wednesday, all day on those 3 weeks. And then we'll come back with the last legislative calendar day, which is May the 17th. And that will be the last day of the legislative session. Now, let me mention a topic that several folks have asked about. It's very important, but we don't have a lot of clarity at the moment, and that is redistricting. That's a requirement after the census for the legislature to redraw the lines for the state school board, for members of Congress in our state, as well as all 140 members of the Alabama legislature. We were expecting that we would have had the census data early enough to have worked on the process and be able to deal with during this legislative session the redistricting requirements. But we've not even gotten the census data and do not expect to receive it until what we're now told may be September or October, which means there will still have to be time to deal with managing, figuring out how to draw the line, so on and so forth. We're hoping that Alabama is able to hold on to all 7 of our congressional seats. It certainly sounds like that may be the case, but again, we don't know that for sure. And that will add a certain element of significance to the fact that if we have to redistrict Congress for 6 seats rather than 7, that will certainly be a challenge. So I expect we will have a legislative special session to deal with redistricting. And I don't know when the governor will be in a position to call that. It may be in December, could be as late as January. So those are real challenges. Alabama's Attorney General has joined with other attorneys general across the country in suing the Census Bureau to try and get that information sooner rather than later. But thus far, we've not seen any action with those suits. So that's an important topic to all of us that we will be working to deal with as we move forward in the months to come, even after we finish with this legislative session. A couple of topics I want to mention as some highlights. We had a significant negotiation, which I know is very important to a lot of your members, important to businesses and insurance and healthcare across our state. And there was a piece of legislation that was associated with pharmacy benefit managers. You had a lot of focus on one side with pharmacies, certainly local pharmacies and areas across our state, as well as big business needed pharmacy managers to help manage and navigate their insurance programs that they supply for their employees. And there was a lot of conflict with that legislation, as many of you may know. Senator Clay Schofield, who's the majority leader, led the effort in working with Blue Cross and other business entities, as well as the Pharmacy Association and local groups, to find a negotiated agreement on the pharmacy benefit management legislation. And that's going to be a great thing for Alabama. Local pharmacies are super important to our communities, especially in rural communities, district like mine. But also we need to make sure we're taking good care of our business entities and making sure that we're controlling the cost as best as possible for those thousands of employees that work for those businesses across our state. So that's been a big issue. You like when things work out like that. It takes a lot of hard work to be able to make it be so. But that's the case on that particular topic. Let me mention one other thing, and then Mary Pat, we may want to ask some questions, and I'm certainly happy to answer if I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll let Senator Wagner answer. But one of the things that I think is important as we look at issues moving forward, for me, there's going to be some legislation coming that's related to the Alabama Innovation Commission. And Chairman Bill Poole from the House of Representatives and myself are the chairs of the Alabama Innovation Commission that the governor put together. We've been doing diligent work for months, have an interim report that's out, and have a final report coming in October. But the whole goal of this commission is, how can we find ways to grow entrepreneurship, startup businesses, high-tech businesses, be able to make sure, are there any landmines for those type businesses out there that Alabama can change or modify? Are there things that we can do statutorily or regulation related that are going to make it more beneficial for people to start businesses and grow businesses in Alabama? And so we've made some great progress. The governor assembled some phenomenal people. We've had a great advisory council that includes some decorated folks like Condoleezza Rice that has allowed Alabama to have access to the Stanford Institution. And they've offered a lot of insight through their research nationwide on ways that we can do this and do it well in Alabama. So there's going to be some legislation coming through the legislature that's going to offer some support on being able to continue this effort. And so that's a topic that's important to me. I think it's important to certainly BBA, and it's important to folks across our state that are looking to allow new business opportunities to grow and capital to be available and entrepreneurs to be able to flourish in the state of Alabama, which is important to all of us. So with that, Mary Pat, I'll be quiet for a moment. Be glad to answer a question if someone has one.
That's great, Senator. And thank you so much for the report on the Innovation Commission. I know you guys have been working hard, and it's great to see it here that, some legislation may come out of that. Is that a next session exercise, do you think?
No,
after the report comes out?
No, it is not. We're going to move forward with some basic pieces of legislation that are in I've introduced in the Senate and Chairman Poole is introduced in the House. We're probably going to allow him to pass the legislation first in the House and then have it moved to the Senate to finish up. But those are two pieces of legislation that are going to be coming this session. So we're going to try to finish them up in the next 6 days. There may be additional legislation or a regulatory, change suggestions or whatever that could be coming in the final report in addition to the things we're working on now. But these are topics we're going to try and finish before the end of the session.
Great. That's very exciting. Thanks for all your hard work on that. And I'll just throw it open. Does anyone out there have a question? A couple have come in the chat function, but if anybody has a question for Senator Reed, I'll turn it over to the audience.
Hey, Mayor Pat, this is Bruce Ely. I've got a quick question for the senator if you have time.
Sure thing.
Hey, Bruce.
Hey, Greg, how you doing, buddy?
Good, sir.
Tied in with the Alabama Innovation Commission, where is the R&D tax credit bill? It's Danny Garrett's bill this time, but I haven't seen any movement on that. Is that going to roll into your commission, or do you know anything about where that stands?
Well, there's been a good bit of work on that legislation. I don't exactly know where it stands in the House. It was a topic that was supported as one of the important elements from the Innovation Commission. However, two pieces of legislation that I mentioned were the top priorities. One was establishing the Innovation Commission or the Innovation Corporation, which is just kind of a public-private entity to allow this effort to continue on recruitment and those kinds of things. And then also being able to offer state match for money that would be with a business as well as federal STTR grant programs.
Yeah.
And that's going to be something that the commission feels like is the number one quickest way that we can impact some of these startups and entrepreneurs in our state. But I'm very supportive of the tax credit, the R&D tax credit program. And I know that Chairman Poole is as well. So I can't give you a straight answer of specific detail on why it's not moving, but it is something that has been supported by the commission.
Okay. Thanks, Senator. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Pro Tem, if I may, I think you and Bruce have said it right. Chairman Poole has made the comment to some of us that he thinks he can incorporate the R&D tax credits into this new current legislation and roll it all into one. So Bruce, you're actually on the right target with that.
Daryl, I think you're right with that. And that's what Chairman Poole has talked about in some ways to do that. But again, I don't know that we finalized that yet in being able to look at the specifics. What I don't want to do is I don't want that R&D tax credit to be something that it's just a discussion and kind of window dressing for the other things we're doing. I think that that is significant legislation and we need to treat it as such. So even if it takes a little more time to try and figure out exactly how we do it, we need to get it right because that's something that will pay huge dividends for a long, long time in our state.
Amen and amen.
Any others out there? I did have one come in, Senator Reed, a question on any potential voting rights legislation. I know we've seen legislation, a lot of media coverage, obviously, on these bills that are passing across the country. Do we expect anything like that at Alabama? I mean, what I've been told is that, states like Georgia, their laws are being passed to get in line with what Alabama is already doing. But do you have any comments on where you see that going in Alabama?
Well, I've got some comments on that for sure. The one thing that we can be proud of in Alabama, as we've seen evidenced by the election process in our state, is that we've got some of the most stringent election laws in America right here in Alabama. We've got some of the most accommodating election opportunities of states across the nation that are on display right here in the state of Alabama. It is my attitude, even though we have a lot of election legislation that is in the legislative process, having been offered as legislation, I feel like that we need to be focused on protecting the good record, the good program that Alabama has in regards to our election process. We don't need to be changing things in a way that would minimize that. I think there are a few pieces of legislation that are sponsored by both Republicans and Democrats that are feasible in looking at ways that we strengthen and protect the election process in Alabama. And I think you're going to see some of those pieces of legislation that are going to be coming through the state Senate. But as far as looking at ways to make wholesale changes in the way we do elections, as you've seen in some other states, I don't think we have any requirement, any need, any focus on trying to do that in Alabama. We need to be very diligent in protecting what we already have, which is a great program for our election process, and be very careful that we're not offering changes just for the sake of changing something when we see other states are making changes. But in reality, they may need to make those changes. To your point, we don't need to be making those wholesale changes. Elections were good in Alabama. The outcomes have been positive. The timing in which the elections are able to be known by the people of our state, those have all been very positive. So that's the attitude I think the majority of legislators have related to these election laws. Let's strengthen what we have. Let's be proud of our election process, offer a few things that are going to be in support of protecting our election process, but no need for wholesale changes or significant modifications in Alabama's electoral process.
Great. That's really helpful. Thank you, Senator Reed. And I think I've got to notice that a couple more questions out there. So
Senator Reed, how are you today?
Good, sir.
So in my capacity, I'm president of the Alabama Clean Fuels Coalition, and I want to say thank you for something. But first, I'll frame it up real quick. On electric vehicles and electric transportation, the electric vehicles are coming from all manufacturers. We see announcements all the time of their transition to electric, over the next 10 to 15 years, including the manufacturers in Alabama, led by Mercedes with their production of vehicles and the battery plant in Bibb County. And we also have others like Autocar in Birmingham and New Flyer in Anniston that are making other classes of vehicles. So we have light duty consumer vehicles, medium duty and heavy duty electric vehicles and batteries being manufactured right here in our state. And we also have the state has made some investments in addition to the Volkswagen settlement funds to install a base level of electric vehicle fast charging in order to maximize the benefit of the electric charging infrastructure, to get as much federal money as possible and to support the build out of the infrastructure around the state. There is a group of organizations, and I'll just read real quick: the Alliance for Alabama's Infrastructure, Alabama Clean Fuels, the League of Municipalities, the Restaurant and Hospitality Association, the Retail Association, Baldwin County Economic Development Alliance, Birmingham Business Alliance, the BCA, EDAA, the Energy Institute of Alabama, Manufacture Alabama, the Mobile Chamber, the Montgomery Chamber, have all written to the legislature asking for the Senate to increase a grant and planning fund at ADECA from $2 million to $4 million in the general fund budget. And it's important for the state to maintain the investments, right now as we wait for the federal government also to act, so that we can, again, have that base level. And I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts and for your support. And we are very hopeful that that increase will occur in the Senate. But I do understand from you that you support it. So it's a good chance just to say thank you.
Well, listen, you rattle off a long list of folks that are great friends of all of ours that are focused on this topic and issue. In my conversations with my friends at Mercedes, there's no doubt that electric vehicles are coming from all manufacturers, and that's what's going to be a part of our future, as well as artificial intelligence associated with the vehicles that we currently drive and are going to be driving. So our driving process paradigm shift looking at a lot that's going on in the automotive industry is something that we in Alabama need to pay very close attention to, in that if my statistics are correct, we're the third largest automotive manufacturer in America. So we're building cars in Alabama, shipping them all over the globe. And many of those cars are going to be electric in the future. So I have been supportive of the initial resource that we added into the budget for this. And then now the ongoing increase for looking at this is something that I have been supportive of as well, and will continue to be supportive of. I think this is something that we can't allow ourselves to not be focused on this in the future. It's something that's going to be very important to Alabamians, to those that are driving and engaging in transportation, but it's also very important to the automotive industry, which is a huge employer and a great growth opportunity for Alabama's economy. So my support's there, and it will continue to be.
Thank you, sir.
Reed, it's Charles Ball. How you doing?
Hey, Charles, how are you, sir?
All right. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, man, glad to.
I would also love to see us, I guess, go after the R&D facilities for the auto manufacturers. I guess other than Mercedes, since Atlanta's already gotten them. We're surrounded by some of the highest rated engineering programs in the country, and it just seems like it makes sense for us to also have R&D centers for these, in addition to the manufacturing facilities.
Well, I think make a lot of sense with that, Charles. That's certainly something important. That's a topic that's come up in discussion on the Innovation Commission calls and meetings that we've had about looking at R&D and development opportunities, and how we hold on to talent in Alabama, how we attract talent to Alabama, especially in STEM areas, in particular related to some of the biggest industries that are important to us in central Alabama, of course, which is the automotive industry, as well as the biomed industry and the high-tech medical industry, of which is going to be increasing significantly with the genomics facility that's going to be coming to the University of Alabama, Birmingham. So yeah, there's a lot of reason for us to continue to work to try and recruit those high-end headquarters and R&D facilities to come to our state. The new incentive packages that we passed in the first 2 weeks of the legislative session had some specifics in there about engineering firms or other high-tech firms with few employees, where they could come and be, businesses that would be following some of this technology growth, and that those would be able to be attractive for Alabama. So those are some of the things that we've talked about already. So I hear you and agree with you. And I think that's something that it's important for our Department of Commerce to continue to be focused on.
Great. Time for one more question, and it's we had one come in, Senator Reed, back to the innovation effort, and the question is, will there be a healthcare component to any of the legislation that you're working on, and in particular rural healthcare?
In regards to the Innovation Commission and some of the things that we're doing there, I think the focus in what we've talked about with innovation is that we're trying to look for innovation to grow in areas that are in rural Alabama. And there's going to be some options for that to be a part of the program, where you have recruitment focused on areas in rural Alabama. Also, in the incentive packages that we mentioned a minute ago, we have specific resources, millions and millions of dollars associated with recruitment in rural Alabama, in counties that are less than 25 or less than 50,000 in population in our state. And whether those are medical facilities or whether those are other kinds of facilities, they can qualify for those kinds of recruitment opportunities to come to rural Alabama. And so those dollars are allocated first for those kinds of projects. And then they can go back to the normal pool of use if they're not utilized in rural areas. But we've certainly had a continued focus on what can we do in the discussion of rural Alabama. Now, specifically with healthcare, there's been quite a bit of discussion related to rural healthcare, ways that we can support rural hospitals, ways that we can offer different options to rural healthcare providers, increasing the number of Medicaid physicians that are in rural areas. So those are topics that continue to be a part of the healthcare discussion as well.
Great. Thank you for that. All right, well, I'll throw it out to the group for any last questions or comments before we turn it back to Elizabeth for some announcements. Hearing no, hearing someone.
I'm sorry for being so dumb today. Senator, as someone who grew up in Birmingham during the 60s, your answer on voting was the most cogent, impressive answer I've heard in a very long time. Thank you. And I really mean that. Lastly, don't confuse having a good session with lobbyists not being able to come in. Those two are not related.
Hey, Daryl, we're missing you guys, but I'll have to say you all are doing an excellent job in communicating with us, even though you're not physically standing in the hallway. So, but I hear you, man. I want coronavirus to be behind us. With the blessing of the good Lord, that's an issue we don't have to deal with any longer, as best we can. And that as we move forward in legislative sessions for the future, you guys can be back closer to interacting with us and being in the building all the time, rather than just when you have an appointment or the like. So I hear you, my friend.
Daryl may be your first constituent visitor in the special session. All right. Well, Senator Reed, can't thank you enough again for being with us today. This has been so helpful, so informative, and you guys have had an amazing session. So our hats are off to you, and thanks for all you do for Alabama and for Birmingham. And we look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thanks so much, Mary Pat. Privileged to be with you today. God bless you all. Have a good afternoon.
Likewise, you too.
Thanks.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, and don't hop off just yet. I'm turning it over back to Elizabeth. She's got a few announcements for us before we wrap it up.
Thank you, Mary Pat. And thank you to Senator Reed and Senator Wagner for joining us and for their comments. I wanted to announce the next meeting of our Governmental Affairs Committee, normally scheduled to be the third Monday of the month, which is May 17th, but that coincides with the last legislative day of the session. So our guest speaker is going to be Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth. We're excited to host him and to accommodate his schedule and the session schedule, we're going to push it back a day. So Tuesday, May 18th, mark your calendars. I'll send an update. We'll be meeting that Tuesday at 11 a.m. rather than noon. And that should be perfect timing to hear a final update for the state legislative session as we wrap that up. And then also on a personal and professional note, I have an announcement. I have my tissue here in case I need it. But big news, after 4 years with the Birmingham Business Alliance, I'm going to be leaving at the end of the month. So this is going to be my last Governmental Affairs Committee with you all, which is hard to fathom. I'm going to miss working in this capacity with all of you, and I'm so thankful for the work that we've been able to do over the years to make Birmingham a better place. And I hope that in the near future, in another capacity, I can continue that work with all of you. For the time being, for the next few months, I'm going to be spending a few months at home with my son and my family and taking some time with them. And I'm really excited for that opportunity. And then after that, I'll be looking for a new opportunity. So I just want to thank all of you. I can't believe we're not in person. I can't shake hands and give hugs, but hopefully we'll be back there again soon one day. And I'm going to be cheering on the Alliance from the side. I know with Ron's leadership, they're going to be very successful. I've enjoyed working with my colleagues so much. There's so much talent there. And I know they're going to be successful, and I can't wait to cheer them on and see that success. So I'll be in touch over the next 2 weeks, and I hope that all of you will plan to stay in touch as well. If I can be a resource, personally or through my capacity at the Alliance. I also want to thank Daryl Perkins for my work with him over the years. I always joke that in my favorites list on my phone, I have my mother, my father, my husband, and Daryl, because we talk all the time. He's been wonderful to work with. He's a great colleague, and I'm going to miss working with him, but I plan to stay in touch. And then Daryl said that he had a few words he wanted to offer as well. So thank you all so much. I'm gonna miss you, but I'm gonna be in touch. So it's not really it's just a see you later.
I vote
Thank
no,
you.
no on that.
Thank you, Charles.
You know, Elizabeth has become one of my kids. I'm that old. She has been a rock the last few years. As the BBF had people coming, people going, we changed directions. She has been there. She's been steady. She's been great. She's made everyone feel comfortable and worked her tail off. And I don't know what the future holds for her, but it will be outstanding. And Elizabeth, this is only the beginning for you. We know that. Anything that I can do or anybody else I'm connected to, you got it. Just let me know. And I will always be in touch, but I will certainly miss working with you.
Thank you, Daryl. Well, if no one else has anything, that concludes our meeting. And we'll be back in May with Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth. So thank you all. I'll be in touch. Thank you, Mary Pat. Appreciate it.
Congratulations, Elizabeth. We're going to miss you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Elizabeth, we sure will.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, everybody.